XLookup function, a live demonstration and training, and I'm Jan Romano, and I'm going to shut my camera off right now so that we can start the training. Okay, we are going to go to a particular slide right now because VLOOKUPs are very important, and as I mentioned, this is an XLOOKUP class, and XLOOKUP has not replaced the VLOOKUP. And some of you mentioned in the chat that you've never used a VLOOKUP before. So I wanted to give you an opportunity when you are getting these slides at the end of this training that you also see a VLOOKUP. Now V means vertical. And so with a VLOOKUP, which has been around for years and years and years and years in Excel, you're able to take one value and compare it with a list of vertical from ascending to descending, and then get an answer from a particular column that you tell it to go to. That is great, and you can nest VLOOKUPs with if functions, and I do have an if and a VLOOKUP training, and you'll see them on our YouTube channel, and I'll be putting that YouTube channel in the chat. Whoops, sorry about that. The YouTube channel in the chat a little bit later so that you have it, but of course it's on these slides when you get them today. But I wanted you to see that, VLOOKUP is definitely useful and powerful, and you still may see it in spreadsheets that are being emailed to you, but the XLOOKUP function is, again, it's only in Office 365. Look at this last bullet. It's available in Excel 365 version 16 and 19, and I think 21 has it as well, of course, but it's the Office 365 subscription, so it's not the desktop version. So it's what? The modern replacement, yes, for VLOOKUP, but again, VLOOKUPs are still available. It's more flexible, it's more versatile, and it allows you to find a wide variety of data from a database. And then more specifically, look at the second bullet. XLOOKUPs can find values vertically and horizontally, can actually give you values that are an exact match or a partial match. You can look at a one value and then tell it to look at a whole bunch of others and find a match or give related information. So it's quite cool. It's very versatile. If you work with databases, then you'll love XLOOKUP. If you work with large bits of data that has lots of information in it, lots of rows, lots of columns, and you're trying to only get specific, you may use a pivot table. Yes, some of you are saying, well, maybe I should be using a pivot table, but this is a function that allows you to put in a formula and quickly get a result. So what are the benefits of using the XLOOKUP function? So you can look at data to the right and left of what we call a lookup value. So I can say to Excel, look at this value and look to the right and the left of it and get me multiple results. So the second bullet says XLOOKUP can return multiple results, and yes, it can. It also can return as a default an exact match, and it also can work, as I mentioned before, vertical and horizontal data at the same time. You see, a VLOOKUP was for vertical and an HLOOKUP was for horizontal text and data. So you had to use two separate functions in order to look at vertical data versus horizontal data. Not so. You can have one function called the XLOOKUP. It also can perform searches going in reverse order as well. So in a VLOOKUP and an HLOOKUP, it always had to be an ascending order, not so with an HLOOKUP. And as I mentioned before, look at that last bullet. The HLOOKUP can return entire rows or columns and not just one value. You see, the VLOOKUP would only return one value based on one value. So you'd say, hey, look at this one value, compare it with this list and give me the answer. And so the XLOOKUP can give me more. And so honestly, the way to really understand any one of these functions in Excel, like the if, the VLOOKUP, the H, the X, is to see how it works in a spreadsheet. And so I'm going to show you in just a moment. Here we go. I'm going to show you, and I'll go back to each individual one. But I'm going to show you these are on the slides as well as I have them live. I have live worksheets with data that are, each slide has a duplicate set of information that is also on the worksheet. So you can go, when you get this presentation, you can go and create your own, exact as I have, your own Excel spreadsheets, which I highly recommend that you do. I hate to just give out spreadsheets because then you don't do the work, and doing the work actually helps you become more confident in Excel and use your Excel skills. But you can create similar to these that I'm going to show you, and you're going to be able to then use the XLookup and nested XLookups as well. That's a mouthful, huh? So again, I'm going to go back to the slide, and I'm going to talk about the parts of the XLookup. Now, this might be too much information to tell you right now, but I want you to understand the terminology. All right? So lookup is a value that you're going to tell Excel to look at. A lookup array. Array means a range of text or a range of values. So you're going to say, okay, take this value, look at this group of cells. Then look at what we call the return array. And this return array is where you're going to tell Excel to give you the data from. And it can be many columns and many rows. And you can actually say if the value is not found, all right, what to return and what to put. If the value is, you can decide to put what we call a 0, which is a match mode. So 0 means an exact match. If you put in the formula a -1 at the end of the formula, you could do an exact match or to the nearest smallest number. If you put a number 1 in the formula, you'll see that you'll be able to do an exact match to the next largest. And also you can use wildcards, which are the stars for the wildcard match, and that would be using the number 2. And so again, these are called match modes, and then there's something called search mode. And you can ignore the match mode and the search mode when you're first starting out, and I'll incorporate some of these into these examples that I have for you. But you should know that you're able to search from first to last, or last to first, or ascending or descending. And so you have what we call search modes. So a 1, a -1, a 2, and a -2. These are included in the formula, and I'll show you how to put those in. So you've got now all the information that you need about the benefits of an XLookup and what you're going to be able to do with an XLookup. But now, honestly, the best way to learn, as I mentioned, is to see the results. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about using the XLookup to perform an exact match. This is one of the easiest XLookup functions that you will see. And I will be able to jump into the Excel spreadsheet and give you more information. Now, I wanted you to notice something on my slide. See how I put 2 equals here? All right, you don't need 2 equals. Let me just hit escape for a second and go to that slide. That might be too confusing to you. And really what it should be is just, I'll just put a space here and you won't even notice the space, but that'll help me with this formula here. All right, let's make that bigger. It'll make more sense with just 1 equals. You know that, let me ask you this question, everybody, before I even go on. I should have asked this in the beginning. How many of you have used the AutoSum function or some built-in function in Excel? And I know some of you already mentioned that you've used the VLOOKUP. So you guys don't have to answer because you've already answered. But anyone else use the AutoSum that maybe haven't used the VLOOKUP before or the if function before? How about, the average or the max or the min? So those are built-in functions, right? And they start with an equals. And how many of you have done simple adding of numbers or multiplying of numbers? Or, and again, I have an Excel formulas training that's on the YouTube channel, which I'll give you at the end, of course. But if you've used formulas before, you should know, and if you haven't, it's okay, you're learning today, but you should know that all formulas start with an equals. And so I want you to just take a look at what the XLookup looks like, and I'll show you how to create it. But it's really important that you understand the logic behind these examples. Because if you don't understand the logic, then you're just learning the rudimentary steps on how to put in an XLookup. But I want you to understand why we're doing this. So notice in this example below, it says movie, and there's a few movies here. Maybe you've heard of some of these. And then the year that they came out and how they were ranked. And again, where did I get this information from? From a website. What were they ranked? You know, first, second, third, meaning the best, maybe 1 to 5, or 1 to 10 or something like that. And then sales in millions. And so you could easily look, I've given you a very small spreadsheet here, which is a database, very small, might be large, might be small, whatever the data is, and I make it small for training so that you can understand it. But you might want to find a movie. Notice I put Toy Story here, and automatically have Excel bring up the sales from column E. So basically, we're going to create an XLookup, and I'll show you again live how to do this, that says, look at G2, which is where I put Toy Story, compare it over here with cells B3 through B6, because these are the names of the movies, and then get the answer, notice E3 to E6, get the answer from E3 to E6, and where is that formula? It's sitting right here in this cell where the 61 appears. So let's jump over to Excel Live. And let's see if I can find this. And here it is right here. So let me just make this a little bit bigger so that you can focus on just this. Hold on a second. All right, one more click, might do it. So I have one spreadsheet workbook that I should say that has several bits of information here. And so I'll make it a little bit smaller in a second so you all can see as well. But again, movie, year, rank, sales in millions, Toy Story down to the proposal, the year that they were produced, a ranking number, which may not even be necessary to what you're looking for, but the sales. And so here is a little table that I made. I just put the data in these cells, and I created an XLookup in here. And how did I do that? Well, I'm just going to move this over so that you can see. I'll put it down here. Here we go. I put in this cell, I'm going to delete it so that you can see. I put in equals. I put the letter X, L, O, and you can see that XLookup pops up. When you click on XLookup, or double click actually, XLookup and an open parentheses will show up. And now you're able to tell Excel what cell you would like it to look at. So I'm going to click in cell G2, or I could have typed cell G2, because that's our, remember the arguments? That is our lookup value, and I'm going to put a comma to tell Excel that's the lookup value. Now, I'm also going to go right here and highlight B3 through B6 and see what Excel does over here on the right. It'll type in B3 through B6 for me as I've highlighted this, and I'm going to put a comma. And let's stop for a moment. What does this mean? It means, okay, Excel, look at cell G2 where I have Toy Story. Go and compare it with cells B3 to B6 and find a match. All right? Then what do? I'm going to tell it to go to E3 through E6 and get the answer that I'm looking for, which is the sales in millions. And you should always put a closing parenthesis to close the formula. And then I hit enter, and I will get the answer 61. Well, what do I do now? Well, it's all set up. I don't have to do the XLookup anymore. All I am responsible for now is to go here and put in the name of a movie, or I could take it from here and copy it and paste it here so that I'm not typing if I don't want to, and I'll paste it. And once I put glass in here, and that is the name of a movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's kind of a scary movie, actually. Probably good for this weekend. And 33 is the answer from column E. I'll type here The Proposal, one of the fun movies that you might have seen, Proposal, and hit enter, and 88 shows up. So you can type in based on these cells here in cell B3 through B6 and get the answers from E3 through E6. So before we go on and we complicate the XLookup, remember the XLookup will perform an exact match as a default. I can tell it otherwise. And how would I tell it otherwise? Do you remember we talked about these arguments? The match mode. So a 0 means exact match. So if I don't put anything, it's an exact match. A -1 is an exact match, or a number to the nearest, smallest, etc. So we'll be working on those as we continue. Here is the example. Notice it says the XLookup in cell G. Oh, this should probably say, yeah, in cell G3. That's where the lookup is. Looks at the name of the movie in cell G2 and compares it with cells B3 to B6. Then it looks at the matching row in cells E3 to E6 to get the answer. Now, if you type in, let's go back to my Excel spreadsheet. Let's say, I'll widen this a little bit. Let's widen this. Here we go. I'm going to type in a movie that doesn't exist into the, in the list here from cells B3 to B6. So I'm going to type in, I don't know, what movie should I type in? Somebody, I'll put, the other night, the Charlie Brown, the Great Pumpkin or whatever. Oh, somebody puts Titanic. I'll put that one instead. And when I hit enter, it's going to say NA, non-applicable, because it doesn't find it from the list. Now, if I decide to go and put more movies into this list, I would then adjust the cell addresses, of course, in my VLOOKUP. So NA means either, watch this, if I type Toy Story and I spell it wrong, I'll still get NA, which is non-applicable. So a lot of the times you'll be looking there and going, I know I spelled it right, and you really didn't. Or again, it may be that it's the spacing is wrong or something like that. But the minute you fix that and then hit enter, you'll be able to get an answer here. So what do you think about, and sometimes it's easier to look at my slides because they're bigger, but I'm going to be bouncing back and forth so I can show you live how to do this. So what do you think about a simple XLookup function? Any other questions you have? Great questions that you've got so far. I've answered them. All right, somebody says they like it. Excellent, good. And can you use it? Do you have data that you need to get information out of? And it's based on what you're interested in at that point. And so I love that I'm able to type in or copy and paste different movies in this case and find the different results. All right, so I'd like to give you different examples because the examples are going to help you understand what you might use this for. So now I'd like you to take a look at this screen. Notice I have quantity and discount. So if somebody buys 10, they get a 50% discount, let's say. If somebody buys between, or let's say 25 to 49, really, you're going to get 10%. If somebody buys a quantity of 100 or more, they'll get 25% discount. So the more you buy, the more discount, let's say. Okay? it could be the more you purchase, the bigger the discount as well. So either way, the more you buy or the more you sell. All right. So if you look at this, I want you to notice, I'll go to the Excel spreadsheet and we'll scroll down and take a look at this. So I may have to make things larger and smaller as we continue because they're all in this same workbook. And I wanted to put them in the same cells so that you would be really familiar with looking at the slides as well as looking at this particular spreadsheet. So I want you to notice I have here the quantity and the discount. Okay. And then here, I just have a cell where I would type the quantity that I'm purchasing. And then I want the results, which will be the discount that pops up. So in this cell, you can look in the formula bar. There is an an XLookup that's looking at cell H12. Here's H12 right here. So this XLookup is looking at this number and it's comparing it with C12 through C16, so the quantity. And notice the quantity is not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's from 0 to 10, 10 to 25, 50 to 100. So this is where I'm going to need the mode match put in. So it compares it with the quantity. And then notice D12 through D16 is the discount. And then notice I have a couple of commas here and then -1. So let's just go back to the PowerPoint for a minute. And then we'll go back to this slide, of course. So let's go back and take a look at the arguments again. What does a -1 mean in a formula? It means that I'm looking for an exact match or the nearest smallest. Okay? All right, so let's go back to the Excel spreadsheet. Sorry about the bouncing around, but I hope that you like the live look at it. So this -1 in this formula, and 2 commas mean a comma to end this, and then a comma to put in what the mode will be. And that's going to be important when you're typing this in. And the mode is going to be a exact match or for the 28 or the smallest, the closest smallest. So it'll look at the 25 and give 10%. So let's put a number in here, okay? All right, you ready? I'm going to put in the number 42. So in your mind, before I hit enter, everybody, what is the number 42 closest to? And I put in the closest smallest. So it's closest to the 25, right? So again, I'm going to get a 10% discount. If I put in here 52 and hit enter, it's going to be not closest to the 100, but closest to the 50. So it's going to put a 20% discount in here. If I put a 17 quantity, 17 is closer to the smallest number, which is 10. So it is going to be, well, that's interesting. I think that should have been 5%. Let me change this to 5%. So I want you to notice something. I'm over here. I'm changing this to 5%. Notice it used to say 50%, so that's why the result was 50, but that's okay. Once I change it, it automatically changes it here. All right, so in the XLookup, it's looking at this number, the quantity. It's looking at this group of numbers to find the match or the closest, smallest number to this in this list. And then it looks here for the answer. Very similar to a VLOOKUP, to be honest with you. All right, what do you think about this? Any questions? So I'll put in here, let's say 32. And I'm going to get, again, 32 is closer to the 25 because we said closest to the smallest. And there's the 10%. Is everybody understanding the -1? Any questions with that? So let's go take a look at the slide so you can see it largely. So again, we're putting in a quantity here. The XLookup is sitting in this cell. The XLookup function in cell I12, and it's right here, I12, looks at cell H12, where the user would type in a quantity, and it compares it with C2 to C16 first, which is the quantity column, to see if it matches or finds the nearest match, and we would put a -1, so we said to the smallest. Then it looks at the corresponding rows in cell D12 to D16, and I just put in parentheses, the -1 row means exact match or next smallest. It should be nearest smallest, really, not next. But it means basically the same thing. What do you think? Any questions? Are you thinking, oh, you can use this? Or are you thinking, oh, my head is spinning? Or, oh, boy, this is not anything I would use. Good. Somebody says very helpful. All right. Excellent. Good. And everybody uses Excel differently. And somebody else says, I will use it. Excellent. Good. Glad to hear that. Always like it when you have a purpose for this. All right. Now, let's make this a little bit more interesting. Multiple matching values. This is quite fun. So I want you to take a look at every employee has a first name and a last name and a department. And they're identified by an ID. So maybe you would like to put in somebody's ID and then have Excel get their first name, their last name, and their department and put it into a bunch of cells that you've designed by using the XLookup. So notice right here. Notice this arrow right here. Harry. This is where I would type my XLookup. And I would say, look at cell G21. So look at the number 4 here. Go and find between B22 and B25. So B22 to B25, a match. And then from C21 through E25. So you're telling it, go find the match of the employee ID and give me all 3 columns of information. So let's go take a look at that. So I'm going to scroll down. All right, so here's a similar example right here. And let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see. All right, here we go. Oops, wrong direction, everybody. All right, here we go. So we've got ID, first name, last name, department. Here's my spreadsheet. Here's my database, really, right? And I've copied the ID, the first, the last, the department, and put them in different cells here in cell G20 and H20, I20, and J20. And then I decided that I want to be able to put somebody's ID here and then find all this information. So I'm going to use the XLookup, right? Okay. Oops, sorry. Let me hit undo. Here we go. So I'm going to delete Harry. And when I delete Harry, all the rest of the information goes away. And I'm going to show you how to put that XLookup right in here. Now, when you do formulas, you can go to formulas. You can go to lookup and reference. You can find XLookup right here. And you can also find VLOOKUP right above it. So again, those, as I mentioned, those formulas are still there. But we can do it this way by just clicking XLookup and it types it. So which way is better for you? Let me hit escape and show you again. You can do equals X, double click on XLookup. Or, let me hit escape, you can do formulas, lookup and reference, go down. To me, this is too long, but click on XLookup and it types it in. Either way works. Now, what am I going to do? I'm going to show it this cell right here in cell G21. I could have typed G21, and I do have to type the comma to tell it that's the lookup value. Now, I'm going to tell it, go find a match in cell B22 to B25. So I'm highlighting these. And then I'm going to put a comma because that's part of the argument. And then I'm going to tell it to look in all three of these columns. C22, starting with first name, down to E25, ending with engineer. And then I'm going to close the parentheses. Don't forget to close the parentheses. If you don't, sometimes Excel will do it for you. Sometimes you'll get an error message. But I'm going to enter that in. And Harry Lynch Engineering popped up. So let's click on that number 4 and type a 3 instead and hit enter. And Sally Brown. Now, someone puts in the chat that all of a sudden the audio is no longer available to them. So is it just that person so that I can chat with them, or is it everyone? Oh, good. Some people can hear me. So let me just chat right now to the person that's having trouble, and let me be with you in just a minute. And what am I telling them? I'm telling them if it doesn't come back, if the audio doesn't come back, then typically everybody should know this, that you typically would log out and log back into the meeting, and hopefully the audio would come back. All right, so did you notice? Let's go back here and let's type a number 1 here and hit enter. And notice the first, the last, and the sales department, in this case it's sales, comes popping in. And this XLookup is saying, based on one number, give me 3 columns of information. It could be as many columns as you have. So this is huge. This is much more than the VLOOKUP and the HLOOKUP can do. So based on one number, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Notice down here, here's the example again. The HLOOKUP in cell H21, which is where Harry is, looks at cell G21, which is the ID number that you type in, and compares it with B22 to B25, which is the ID column here in your database, to see if it matches. And then it looks at the corresponding rows in cells, and that should have been, sorry, that's an error, C22 to E25. And so that should be C22. I've got to fix that. All right. Why? Because C22 to C25 to E25 is the first name, last name, and department. Making sense? So this formula is correct right here. Let me just edit this down here real quick. That way there, when you get these slides, you'll get the correct information as well. Did I jump to? So we did the movies, we did the quantity, we are doing the multiple matches right now. So this down here should be C22 to E25. Okay. Any questions? All right, you want to keep going? You want to see some more examples? Let's take a peek at what we can look at next. Something very similar, another example. Notice I do have here employee ID, employee name, title, and department. And again, based on the employee ID, I would like their name, their title, and department. So let me go back a slide. Very similar to this right here, but this time I'm using their name and title and department. Again, just a little example and a little different, but it's such a good tool that I wanted you to see it again, based on maybe a little larger spreadsheet, a little bit different, a little similar as well. So again, I would build this spreadsheet, and I have it so I can show you. But notice Joe Brown, sales manager, sales is the department. what will this XLookup do? Well, the user will type in cell H5 an ID, and then we'll tell Excel to look at cell H5. So you can see the XLookup right here. Sorry, I lost my mouse. There we go. And we're telling it to take a look at H5 and compare it with B7 through B16. So here's B7 through B16 in the employee ID. Then we're telling it to get all the answers from C7 to E16. So very similar. Let's go take a look at it. Let's see if I've got this one. All right, this one I think. Okay, maybe I don't even have this one listed here because it was so similar. Yeah, I might not, because I wanted to show you just again different examples. So I might not have this to jump to. Maybe I do, but I won't jump to it because again, it's 1:45 and I think I'll try to show you something else. But this is another good example of saying, look at one number, base it on the data that you find in the database, and give me more than one column of information. In this case, it's 3 columns and it can be more. All right, let's take a look at this one. A nested XLookup. What does nested mean? A nested XLookup, look at this particular example, means an XLookup inside an XLookup. Oh boy. Yes, it can be done for information that you're trying to find out based on 2 matches, not just 1 match. So we've been working with the XLookup looking for 1 match, like the employee ID, and then giving us information. Let's take a look at this example. So product by grade. Here we go. And I'm just going to move this so everyone can see it in my little window here. All right, move it over. And I'll move it over some more so we can see. All right, so I want you to take a look. Product price by grade is basically what this is all about. So this is the title, and we are saying that there's vinyl, wood, and glass. These are the products. And there's a grade A of vinyl, grade B of vinyl, grade C of vinyl of different prices. And so with wood and so with glass. So say, for example, especially for flooring, you were looking at the prices for vinyl, the prices for wood, let's say, and you were looking at the different grades and trying to figure out, what if I do a grade C of vinyl, what will the price be? And so you'll be able to see from this data just by using an XLookup. Now in this XLookup though, it is nested. So this is where you can get yourself in a little bit of trouble when you're typing in a nested if function. And basically if you take a look at this formula sitting right here is the same as the one up in the formula bar. And notice you've got parentheses and commas and 2 parentheses at the end. So it's very important that you type it in correctly. So let me start. I'll start with an equals XLookup, and I'll put an open parentheses, or I could have double clicked on that, right? And now I'm going to say in cell I32, and so the grade in cell I32, put a comma. For the grade, I want you to take a look at C31, which is grade A, all the way through F31. So grade A, grade B, grade C, and then grade D. So I want, when I put a grade in, grade A, B, C, or D, I want you to compare it and find the match with cells C31 through F31. Okay, or in this case, it's F34. Yeah, I kind of moved this. Yeah, let me see. Let me take a look for a second here, just to make sure. I'm just going to hit undo for a second. Do that. All right, let me just take a peek. So C31 through F31. Yeah, so I actually Okay, so this is what I'm doing. Sorry, I got a little confused there. My fault. I'm explaining it. Here we go. So we're going to look at this grade, right? And this grade is, oops, sorry. Let's put in equals here. Trying to go fast because the time is flying. So put in I-32 and C31 through F31, meaning these grades A, B, C, D, not the numbers below it. And then I'm going to put a comma and put XLookup again. I'm nesting an XLookup inside a lookup and putting a parenthesis and now saying, take a look at vinyl now, which is I-31, and compare it with B32 to B34. And then I'm going to put a comma. So I highlighted B32 to B34. I'm going to put a comma. And then you're going to see, I'll just take this and move it down so you can see. Oh, sorry. You're going to see that I am going to highlight all of these numbers, which is C32 through F34, and close with a double parenthesis because first, anytime I have XLookup, I count how many times I see the words, and those are the numbers of closing parentheses I need to have. And then I'll hit enter. So let's type in a number here. No, this is where the formula is, right? Vinyl grade C is $13. And let me make this look like money so it makes a little bit more sense. There we go. All right. So let's put here, instead of vinyl, let's put wood. Wood grade C is $15. Let's say instead of grade C, we're looking for D for wood, and that's $18. And maybe I'm looking for vinyl grade D, and see the difference. So that's 15. And so you're seeing the results based on what? The XLookup is looking at this cell I-32 for the grade, comparing it with these grades in cell C31 through F31. So it's the labels that go across the columns. Then once it compares those, do another XLookup so that, again, two XLookups in the same, so that it looks at I-31, which is vinyl, compares it with these over here, which are B32 to B34. And then what am I looking for? Well, whatever the match is to this XLookup and this XLookup, find the answers in this bunch of cells, C32 to F34, and give me the answer right here. And honestly, I hope I'm helping you make sense of it. The first couple of times that you might type something incorrectly. So let me double click on this and let me just put one parenthesis at the end and hit enter. And sometimes what Excel will do is fix it for you and put in two parentheses. And sometimes it'll say, nope, this is, you see the entire XLookup here, which is thinking it's just text. So if I go to the formula bar and I put in another parenthesis and enter, now it is a real formula. If I, for example, take away a comma, let's say I forget a comma in the XLookup and hit enter. Again, it's going to give me the text in the cell. It used to in the desktop version or in older versions give you an error, and you were able to go and step through the particular function and where you might have gone wrong. Here it gives you the text so that you can look easily and see where you went wrong. You would always either edit it right here, or you would come up to the cell address, and which is in the formula bar. So the cell address is I-33. Here is the formula bar. You would edit, you would enter, and hopefully you'd get the right answer here. Any questions with a nested lookup? So you don't always have to look at horizontal first. Someone asks if we always have to look at horizontal. No, you can look at vertical first, and we've done that. We've looked at vertical first, but it really depends on, it can go right to left, left to right. I just probably are more consistent doing vertical and then horizontal, probably left to right. All right, one last example I think I'm going to be able to show you. I think about teams that you might, some of you may be, soccer coaches or hockey coaches, and you might be in charge of, getting the uniforms or the sweatshirts or the ball caps or whatever it might be. And so notice I created a spreadsheet with multiple arguments. So hooded sweatshirt is there several times for small, medium, large for adults and children. T-shirts, same thing, jackets and ball caps. So ball caps just had a large for an adult and a small for a child. So if you're an adult, you got a large. If you're a small, you got a child. If you're a child, you got a small. But with a jacket, you may be a small, medium, or large size as a child and a small, medium, or large size as an adult, etc. The same with the T-shirt and the hooded sweatshirt. And the prices are different based on the size because of the material that needs to be used. So this XLookup, I want you to notice, is very cool. It has the ampersand in there, which is the and symbol. So instead of just comparing one number, as we have been doing, you could take as many numbers as you want and put the and sign, the ampersand, which means and, so that the XLookup looks at, in this case, right here, I5, I6, I7. Take a look at all the data that I'm typing in. Then go and compare it with cell C4 through C24, which is the list of the items. Then it has an and again. Not only are you going to look at columns C5 through C24, you're going to look at columns D5 through 24 and E5 through E24. So you're going to look at, someone's going to type in an item, a size, and a group. Your XLookup is going to be here because you want to know the price based on the item name, the size, and whether it's an adult or in this case a child. And the answers are going to come from the price, which is in F5 through F24. So let's go take a look at this live, and this will be our last example. And here it is. So I have employee. Oh, no, this is not it. Oh, no, hold on. It's in this one. Here we go. All right. That's what I get for trying to be organized, right? So here we go. Let's make this a little bit smaller. So here are the hooded sweatshirts all the way down to the ball caps, and each one of the sizes and groups and prices. Here's the item, the size, the group, and here's where I put the XLookup. And the XLookup is big, and so it has ampersands and commas in it, and I won't type it because of time, but you can see that it is looking right here. It is looking at cells I5, I6, and I7 and matching them with C5 through C24 and D5 through D24 and E5 through E24, and then getting the answer from F5 to F24. That's just these cell addresses. So right now, if I type in not a number, because that's where the XLookup is, so we never type over where the XLookup is. If I type here, let's say jacket, a small adult jacket is $25. And if you want to go and double check, here's a small adult jacket is $25. How about a large jacket for an adult is $27. And let's say I do a ball cap, and Oops, sorry, I put that in size. So I do a ball cap, and it's an adult, it's $16. If I change this to a child, and I leave large here, do you see that? It says NA, non-applicable, because in my list, I don't have large child. I only have small size for a child. So I would have to make sure that I would know in this case. That's the only case because there's only two choices instead of the large, medium, and small for the ball caps. But once I put in small here, it changes to $11. And this is money, so again, I'll make this look like money. Make sense? So in this case, everybody, there's multiple ands in this argument. So multiple, the ampersand means ands in this particular XLookup, and these are called arguments. What do you think about this one? Give it 3 choices to match, and then give me the answer from these particular columns. So you have to have all the data, and some of you might be thinking, well, a pivot table will give me similar information. Yes, but not as versatile as the XLookup. All right, what do you think? Let me just go back, whoops, and see what you think about all of these choices here. And how do you feel about the XLookup function now? Do you feel comfortable? Tell me in the chat how you feel about this particular function if you're going to be using it, and then I'll do a file transfer. All right. Oh, good. Someone says excited to try. Sounds like a good formula to use. All right, excellent. Okay, well, our time is up, and I figured about an hour would be a good enough time to give information as well as examples, and maybe I should have gone an hour and a half. Maybe the next time we'll do that, and we'll throw in a few more examples. Did you feel like the examples were the best way to see how the XLookup was working? Someone mentions it might be a challenge to try. So let me give you what I would say to do. You can rewatch this. I recorded it. I'll put it on the YouTube channel probably by next week. But you can go and create these exact spreadsheets by the examples that I've given. You can go into the cells and try typing what I typed and then seeing if it works and then analyzing it. Try first that. For example, take, one of the examples and type it all in. Type in the data that you're looking for, the field names, and then put in the XLookup. Type it in exactly the way I have it if you use the exact cell. So go to cell B6 and put in employee ID. That'll be the best thing. Go to cell H4 and put in employee ID, and I4 put in employee name, etc. So make it exactly like this. Then type in the XLookup where I've put the arrow and see that it works, and then go ahead and look at the XLookup and then start analyzing. I think that's one of the best ways to learn how a formula is working, because you can see the results and then you can go back and say, oh yeah, it's looking at this cell H5, comparing it to B7 through B16, getting the answers from these 3 columns. And that'll help you digest and understand that lookup. All right, good. Okay, thank you, everybody.